This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. Today I'm going to do a stock market update as of Thursday night's close for Friday morning. I'm going to do a update on the sentiment. I'm going to go through volatility. I'm going to look at the overbought, oversold oscillator on the market. I'm also going to go through trend and momentum on the monthly, weekly, daily, and then we'll take a look at the hourly as well. So let's go ahead and get going with this. As we switch over and look at the market conditions, I like to start from the bottom here and look at the sentiment number to start. So the sentiment, we're getting a little bit more bullish again. We've got 49% bulls now, and these are the letter writers. This is Investors Intelligence sentiment number, and it's gone from I think it was up about 4 or 5% for the week, and this was also went from 22 to 27 for the week. That's the difference between the bulls and the bears. So we got a little bit of a jump, but it still qualifies as neutral. It's not really, I would say the danger zone is in that 35 to 45% area when we get up there, and then the buy zone is really anywhere closer to 0 or less. If we get in something like that, just to give you an idea, if we go and look at the low here, we were at negative 19% at the low. All right. So, we want to be aware of that. And I think up at the top, this was up in the 30s, maybe like 35 or 36 or 7 or something like that. So we just want to keep an eye out for that. Right now, it is in neutral. It's still operating off of like a sell signal, essentially, especially when we look at the overbought, oversold oscillator, which is also now neutral. But I've got in a 5 RSI, and as we made a new high coming up into this peak here, we had a pretty nice divergence taking place in the RSI 5. And so both of those indicators were at negative at that point, right near the high, pretty much on this bar here. And that is more of a short-term indicator when everything else looks okay. Now, I'm going to go through the trend and momentum in a second, but first thing we got to do is look at the volatility. And one of the things that shifted here this week is the daily volatility moved from negative to neutral. And that's because we've had a decent little rally here, and it's kind of quieted down a little bit. So we're losing a little momentum. Now, it's not negative because, it hasn't turned positive yet because this moving average has not rolled over. But that would not take very much. If the volatility stays low for another day or two, then this will actually roll over and this will switch back to positive. So that's the daily time frame. If we look at the weekly time frame, look at the way this has looked pretty much for the whole year. I mean, basically it turned down below the moving average right about the beginning of the year, and it has been pretty bullish. Low volatility conditions for the weekly. Okay, so when the size of these bars are not that big and they're not growing, this line is going to be dropping. That's the average true range. And the moving average is going to follow suit. I use an 18 period moving average. So we've had this trend to the downside that's telling you that we should expect support from this moving averages, and moving average, this 18, and we really have not turned this up enough to increase the risk yet. But what's taking place in the short term is a little bit interesting. So as we switch over and we start to look at the actual trends that are developing, one of the things I do want to start with is the monthly chart, because we made this move up, and when we broke above the 18, that was a really positive sign, improved the bias, but it never tested this line, and this line was declining. So typically you'd expect some form of a test. Now, it could just be a sideways pause while the moving averages underneath cup around. And that looks like what this might want to be trying to do. It also could be, we're only at the 7th of the month, right? I mean, this could be the beginning of a month that wants to pull back and make another lower low. Maybe we're going to pull back a little bit more, form a little pinch here after crossing over, right? And this moving average will start to rise starting next month, most likely. We already have a rising 40 month. So it will start to look a lot better if it plays out that way. But it might take a little bit more of a pullback or a sideways pause for another month or two. If we play out that way, I would actually say that's probably a positive. If it can come back and check back towards the 18 month and do it in a fashion that's not violently, causing the volume and the price action and the momentum conditions to really turn ugly, then it's probably going to be a pretty good setup to the upside. So we're just going to have to watch and see. And the driver, the interesting thing is we know what we're looking for, what we want to develop here, but the driver starts here, and then it forces this trend to do one thing or another, and then this forces this trend to do one thing or another, and then eventually will be seen on this time frame. So we got to look at these smaller time frames to give us a heads up, and we're going to get into those in a second. Let's start with the weekly, though. So we've got some counteracting things taking place when you look at this. We had a pullback that was a pretty strong pullback because it caused the MACD to overrun. Now, most of the time when I see that, I look for a move up and then a move back down, and then we have to see. We could come back up through this high, and that could look pretty good. We could form, we can't form a pinch. Do you see how this rolled over? So this really isn't a pinch play anymore because it rolled over before we took out this high. And now, if we were to form another lower high here, we wouldn't have a pinch in place. Hope everyone sees what I'm talking about. So if we make another lower high here, we have to take out this high to turn things up to the upside. So that's how I would look at that. Now, you can go down to the smaller time frame and try and time it a little bit better than that. But on this time frame, this becomes a lot more important now, especially if we pull back anymore and test this. It's essentially 4,400 on the S&P. If we come down to this low, it's like 43.35. But even a test of 4,400 and a test of the 18 week line, and then a reemergence to the upside would be pretty bullish, even though this is doing this. And the reason that's the case is because this ADX showed a really strong reading here and is still holding up pretty well. It's not like it's recrossing, falling back below the 25 line. And green DI is still kind of hanging in there. But the biggest difference is that green DI is at 25 and minus DI is at 14. I mean, there's still a 10-point difference between those two. It's still pretty strong conditions. It's going to take a little work to reverse that. All right, let's go and look at the nitty gritty here. Let's look at the daily chart. And I've got these lines up still because even though we turned and took out this big red bar to the upside and crossed back above the moving averages, we still could be qualifying as a 2. So this would be the 1, the break of the trend line. This could still be the 2. And then if we come down through this trend line here, that would be the 3. We can definitely be potentially doing that. We could also be setting up a pinch play because we have 1, 2, 3 lower highs sitting on the moving average. The volume hasn't even been greater than normal, but I don't know if I want to do that as it just takes out this bar here. Okay, I've talked about this in my course. Do you see this separation we have from the 4MA? So we could kind of come up here and hit that and take out that high, and it'd still basically be hitting the 4. So I'd probably look for a little bit more confirmation than just a early morning break above or something like that. That to me wouldn't really be that great a signal. The other reason why that's the case is that this is more of a flat moving average. So I'm looking for something a little bit more significant. I might even want to wait for a close above the low bar and get a convincing pivot low off this pinch signal. The other reason is that we don't really have green DI holding yet. I mean, so it's not like this is just some massively beautiful setup developing, but I think it needs to be respected, especially if we take out a 2-bar high. So if we not only take out this bar, but we take out that bar and we take out 2-bar high to the upside, then we got to start respecting what's going on and expect a move back up and testing the peak back up in July. So the way it's pulling back, though, has been kind of rough. I think tomorrow, maybe not the morning, but how it handles tomorrow will be pretty important. We could have a little up opening that gives back. And when I say tomorrow, I'm doing this on Thursday for Friday. So I'm saying tomorrow, but I'm saying, what you guys are seeing is Friday morning. I'm saying today or Friday, it's probably going to be testing this 4 MA, and we got to see how it handles that. Certainly wouldn't do anything significant to the upside or be a buyer or anything like that until we get through 30 minutes and take out the 30-minute high at a minimum. But we're kind of bouncing around. This is kind of a deep pullback. And the reason why I'm saying all this is look at this pullback here is this pullback here. You see what's going on. You see how the ADX is showing some strength. So I'm not looking for a quick turnaround here. I'm expecting this to bounce around. I think this needs to drop. I think we need to get green DI going again because red DI has sort of taken over in the interim. It hasn't shown, this is very important. So we look at this move to the upside and we had a lot of strength. And I actually measure this strength here. That's the plus. That's the plus strength, right? Now we get a move to the downside. Now it's pretty strong because it's above 25, but it's not, this is the minus strength. It's nowhere near as strong as the positive. So for now, our bias is still to the upside and we're sitting on the 18-day line. So it's still within reason. But what this is telling me is that we're not in a big hurry. Don't play something real quick to the upside. Look for this to move up and play a higher low or something like that. We're looking for some kind of a 1, 2, 3 type of a pattern when we get ADX going to the downside. It's clearly we have overrun, so we're not going to play something quick to the upside. And either one, both of these indicators are telling us the same thing. No rush right now to play an upside move if this thing gets going right away. Now, if it turns out there's some, reason the market makes some monster move and has a strong close, then that'd be a little bit different because then we'd be making a higher low on the daily chart on a closing basis off of a pinch right at the 0 line. See what I mean? And green DI will probably be moving. I'm just telling you, don't get whipped around on an intraday trade when it's not really giving us that feedback right now. All right, that's the update for the week. Go ahead and let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks.